James Caan as Santino Sonny Corleone. James Caan set the screen on fire as Sonny Corleone, the hot-headed, ferocious eldest brother driven by a loyalty that never wavered. Sonny's blood-soaked death at the toll booth remains one of the most terrifying, unforgettable moments in film history, searing Caan's name into the minds of millions of 1970s audiences. But fame from The Godfather didn't bring peace. It pulled James Caan into the darker pits of life. The 1980s saw him spiral into a severe crisis, battling cocaine addiction and crushing depression after his sister died of leukemia. His private life became a storm of chaos: 4 broken marriages, exhausting legal battles, and a long, grueling struggle with addiction alongside his son. Beneath the hardened exterior of Sonny lived a deeply wounded soul, fighting to find balance while loneliness and pressure closed in from every side. Even as he fought to rise again, age and illness still arrived like an unstoppable storm. In his later years, he faced serious cardiovascular problems and coronary artery disease, echoes of a youth lived too intensely, too recklessly. His aging body had to endure relentless chest pains, leaving the once mighty warrior weakened and drained. On July 6, 2022, his heart stopped, sudden, painful, and devastating, extinguishing the last flame of his fierce spirit. His passing left behind a vast, icy emptiness, as if a piece of heroic history had been buried forever. James Caan was laid to rest at Eden Memorial Park, finally at peace after a life of storms. He will forever be Sonny, the man with the blazing heart, one who made the world mourn and who left behind a fiery acting legacy and an irreplaceable place in cinema's legendary Hall of Fame. Marlon Brando as Don Vito Corleone. Marlon Brando forged an immortal Don Vito Corleone with his gravel-thick voice, the calm, habitual stroke of his chin, and an authority so chilling it seemed almost supernatural. He did more than resurrect his own faltering career. He redefined the very standard of acting for the world, transforming the mafia boss into a cultural icon who commanded both reverence and fear from millions of viewers. Yet behind the glittering throne of Oscar gold stood a Marlon Brando slowly descending into the shadows of personal tragedy and chronic psychological turmoil. His life was relentlessly scarred by failed marriages and devastating family catastrophes. His eldest son imprisoned for murder, and his daughter Cheyenne taking her own life in despair in 1995. Gradually, Brando withdrew from the world he once ruled, becoming an outsider by choice, isolating himself on his private island in Tahiti, fleeing the very society that had crowned him king. Loneliness gnawed at his soul, turning the once all-powerful patriarch into a wounded old man, burdened by regret and estranged from reality itself. The final years of The Godfather unfolded as a suffocating portrait of darkness and pain. Once the handsome idol of millions, Brando's weight spiraled out of control, exceeding 150 kilograms. His body heavy as stone, crushing the last remnants of vitality within him. From the 1990s onward, he depended entirely on an oxygen tank to sustain each wheezing, labored breath. Heart failure and pulmonary fibrosis ravaged his body with merciless cruelty, transforming his final days into a solitary, frozen battle fought behind indifferent walls. No trace remained of the commanding figure he once was. Only a frail, failing body, fading helplessly, waiting for death's scythe to deliver release from the nightly torment of physical suffering. On July 1, 2004, Marlon Brando drew his final breath in Los Angeles, alone, leaving behind a surprisingly modest estate compared to the record-breaking fees he once commanded. His ashes were scattered in Death Valley, closing the journey of a lost genius. Yet the legacy of Don Vito Corleone endures, timeless, long after the man himself has vanished. Some believe Marlon Brando is the irreplaceable soul of The Godfather, while others argue that Al Pacino is the one who truly carried the entire film. But what about you? Who is the real Godfather in your heart? Comment 1 for Marlon Brando or 2 for Al Pacino, and let's share our thoughts together. John Cazale as Fredo Corleone. John Cazale embodied Fredo Corleone as the weakest and most lost son within a powerful dynasty. With sorrow-filled eyes and a haunting air of resignation, Cazale infused the role with a rare fragility, leaving audiences torn between anger and profound compassion for a man cast aside by his own family in The Godfather. Tragedy struck at the cruelest possible moment. Just as John's career was reaching its brightest peak, fate played its darkest joke. In the midst of a love story as luminous as a dream with Meryl Streep, he received a death sentence from his doctors: terminal lung cancer. His world collapsed overnight, shifting from the glow of stage lights to the cold corridors of hospitals. Ignoring warnings that he had only weeks to live, he pushed himself to complete his role in The Deer Hunter, clinging desperately to the little time he had left, suffocating under the daily approach of death. The final days of March 1978 became a living hell as the cancer spread to his bones, devouring the flesh of the gifted actor. Physical agony drained him to the brink, reducing his body to little more than skin and bone. Meryl Streep put everything aside to remain by his bedside, holding his hand each day through tears and helplessness. John Cazale lay there, watching the age of 42 slip through his fingers, crushed by the knowledge that he would die without ever seeing his final work released. Life was taken from him with merciless cruelty, leaving him suspended on the brutal edge between survival and extinction. He drew his final breath on March 12, 1978, never having married and leaving behind no children. A line written by fans, "Every film you touched became immortal," stands as the most dignified farewell to a brilliant yet tragically short-lived talent. Al Pacino as Michael Corleone. From an unknown actor, Al Pacino exploded into a legend through his role as Michael Corleone. He masterfully traced the moral collapse of an idealistic young man into the screen's coldest monster. Michael's eyes, burning with fire yet stripped of feeling, became a mirror of power's brutality, leaving audiences both terrified and hypnotized, unable to look away. But the Godfather crown proved far heavier than any artist's shoulders were meant to bear. For 2 decades, Al Pacino fell into an abyss of depression and alcoholism, trying to outrun the crushing pressure of fame. His life became a patchwork of scattered pieces: passionate romances with no final harbor, 4 children, and not a single marriage. He threw himself into work like a moth into flame, using acting as his only painkiller, the one remedy that could soothe a restless soul riddled with cracks. At 85, Michael Corleone faces the greatest enemy of all, time and illness. His health has declined sharply. At one point, he came frighteningly close to death from COVID-19, a moment when he felt as if he might finally let everything go. He lives quietly and withdrawn in California, far from the noise of the city. The image of that fiery, commanding man is now reduced to an aging, slower shadow, appearing only occasionally with a distant, nostalgic gaze. The stillness that blankets his later years is the steep price he pays for a lifetime spent giving everything, until there was almost nothing left. And though those eyes still hold a faint ember of Michael's old flame, Al Pacino today resembles an aging king seated on the throne of memory. He remains there, one of the greatest living witnesses, yet also the one who understands most deeply the sorrow of fading away. Abe Vigoda as Salvatore Tessio. Abe Vigoda, with his long, gaunt face and eyes heavy with worry, was the perfect choice for Tessio. The moment when the character is quietly led away to be taken care of remains one of the film's most silent yet devastating scenes. Vigoda captured, with haunting precision, the resignation of a hardened old man cornered by his own fatal miscalculations in The Godfather. Absurdly, the media killed him off many times while he was still very much alive. In 1982, People magazine reported that he had died, forcing Vigoda to pose for a photograph sitting inside a coffin to prove otherwise. Though he later turned the incident into running jokes on television, deep down it planted a lingering obsession with death, one constantly spoken of by others. For decades, he lived with the label of nearly dead, typecast in weary, aging roles, as if the world were simply waiting for him to finally lie down for good. Eventually, fate's cruel joke reached its end. On January 26, 2016, his 94-year-old body could no longer resist the laws of nature. He passed away peacefully at his home in New Jersey, not as a rumor this time, but as an undeniable truth. There were no more playful quips about false deaths, no more public corrections. This time, silence settled forever. The old oak finally fell, carrying an entire golden era with it, ending a lifetime spent being teased by death's scythe. Abe Vigoda's earthly journey has closed, but Tessio's expressive haunted gaze will linger with audiences forever. He stands as a testament to extraordinary endurance, a man who survived even the cruelest rumors, smiling defiantly until the very end. John Marley as Jack Woltz. John Marley carved his name into film history with a single blood-curdling scream, the moment Jack Woltz awakens to the severed horse's head soaked in blood. That instant shattered the limits of on-screen terror in the 1970s, becoming one of the most infamous nightmares ever etched into The Godfather. A tireless pioneer of independent cinema, Marley devoted himself relentlessly to his craft, even as his body quietly turned against him. Chronic heart disease loomed like a ticking bomb, eroding the strength of the aging artist hour by hour. He worked through sheer endurance, concealing crushing chest pains to finish his roles. Beyond the blinding camera flashes lay long nights ruled by medication and a growing dread of a health crisis spiraling beyond control. In 1983, a fateful open-heart surgery seemed poised to save him, only to unleash a cascade of complications that could not be contained. His life flickered like a candle in a storm, then went out on May 22, 1984. He passed away in Los Angeles at 76, ending a prolonged and painful battle with illness. There were no miracles for the real-life Jack Woltz, only the chill of hospital rooms and medicine's helplessness before the harsh laws of life and death. John Marley may have taken his final bow, but that scream still echoes, proof of acting at its most powerful. A distinguished 45-year career closed with dignity, leaving behind enduring respect and a performance that cinema will never forget. Diane Keaton as Kay Adams Corleone. Diane Keaton gave the world a deeply conflicted Kay Adams, the only woman brave enough to love and challenge Michael Corleone from within the moral prison of the mafia. Her eyes carried the tension between fierce devotion and overwhelming fear, becoming the last surviving conscience that dared to illuminate the blood-soaked tragedy of the Corleone family. Behind that intellectual beauty and radiant smile lay a fractured soul hidden for decades. Diane Keaton quietly battled an eating disorder, bulimia, for more than 10 years, a destructive attempt to impose control over a life spiraling in chaos. Though she was once the muse of Hollywood's most celebrated leading men, she chose emotional distance, living in quiet restlessness, haunted by a fear of commitment and the loss of personal freedom. Even a soaring career could not fill the void of a woman who longed for love, yet repeatedly turned away from lasting intimacy. The final chapters of her life were tinged with the melancholy of farewell. Though she found late comfort in raising her two adopted children, advancing age brought an unavoidable physical decline. In October 2025, bacterial pneumonia attacked her already fragile body. No longer the luminous star of red carpets, she lay confined, struggling through each labored breath as medicine proved powerless to stop life from slowly slipping away. A screen legend was forced to confront the cruel limits of mortality, when breath itself, once her instrument for bringing characters to life, became heavy, broken, and scarce. On October 11th, 2025, Diane Keaton passed away quietly in Santa Monica. Her memorial was held in simplicity, reflecting the way she lived, independent and fiercely dignified. She left behind a monumental cinematic legacy and an enduring sense of loss, remembered as one of the defining souls of a new Hollywood generation. Talia Shire as Connie Corleone. Talia Shire crafted a haunting portrait of Connie Corleone, from an innocent young woman trapped in abuse to a cold, ruthless matriarch. She became the embodiment of loss, a sacrificial offering in the power games orchestrated by her father and brother. That jagged psychological transformation allowed Shire to step out from the enormous shadow of her famous lineage and assert a formidable identity of her own in The Godfather. Away from the camera, fate tormented this gifted woman with deeply private sorrows. Her first marriage collapsed, leaving wounds that had barely begun to heal when an even harsher trial arrived. Her second husband, producer Jack Schwartzman, was diagnosed with cancer, plunging her into a long, exhausting battle to hold on to the life of the man she loved. The burden of single motherhood, standing strong as the sole pillar for 3 children while swallowing tears as she watched her partner fade day by day, became a psychological ordeal beyond words. The year 1994 marked the darkest, most devastating note in her life's symphony as Jack Schwartzman succumbed to death. The cruel illness stole away her greatest emotional anchor, leaving Talia adrift. She forced herself to conceal her fragility, her inner collapse, becoming an unbreakable fortress for her children. Widowhood in midlife weighed like a stone upon her heart, stretching nights into endless corridors of grief. The emptiness of a once full home stood as a brutal testament to the price of a happiness that proved heartbreakingly brief, compelling her to press on along a path strewn with the thorns of solitude. Now approaching 79, Talia Shire has chosen to step back, finding quiet grace among her children and grandchildren in California. Though the glory of the past has faded, the silhouette of Connie Corleone still stands, unyielding, iconic, a testament to the fierce resilience of women surviving within the darkest underworlds. Lettieri as Virgil the Turk Sollozzo. Lettieri sent chills through audiences as Virgil Sollozzo, the Turk, a cold-blooded figure with eyes as sharp as blades. Though he appeared only in the first chapter, Lettieri delivered a chillingly precise portrait of a dangerous adversary, the man who ignited the bloodiest war in the underworld of The Godfather. In stark contrast to the calculating menace he portrayed on screen, Lettieri's real life spiraled into chaos and loss of control. He battled a crippling gambling addiction, mounting debts and failing health brought on by heavy drinking and chain smoking. Hollywood's spotlight could not save a man slowly destroying himself through self-destructive habits and relentless pressure. He lived in painful contradiction, celebrated on screen yet impoverished and desperate in reality, consumed day by the demons within. In 1975, just as his career seemed to be reaching full maturity, tragedy struck with brutal suddenness. Lettieri collapsed from a massive heart attack at only 47, dying so quickly he had no chance to say goodbye. He left behind a wife and children in extreme hardship. With no real savings, all that remained were a few faded movie posters and stacks of unpaid bills. An estate worth less than $100,000 marked a bitter, humiliating end for a talent once feared across Hollywood, now laid low by an unforgiving fate. His quiet passing stands as a harsh reminder of the true cost of fame. Lettieri may have faded into silence, but the threatening gaze of Soluzzo endures, forever haunting audiences as one of cinema's most unforgettable villains. Gianni Russo as Carlo Rizzi. The handsome yet brutally hardened face of Carlo Rizzi became an unforgettable symbol of betrayal. Gianni Russo brought to the screen a despicable son-in-law, the man who sold out his wife's family and met his deserved end, strangled in the back seat of a car. It was a small role, yet its impact was so lethal that audiences came to believe he was the very embodiment of evil itself. Reality, however, proved even darker than fiction. Gianni Russo didn't need to act. He had grown up inside the underworld, once serving as an errand boy for the notorious mob boss Frank Costello. His life was steeped in violence, shot 3 times, and forced to take a man's life in self-defense during a bar altercation in 1988. These harrowing experiences forged a hardened spirit, forever scented with gunpowder and danger. Russo has admitted he escaped from hell, yet the memories of those blood-soaked years still cling like a curse, denying his mind any true peace. Now, with hair turned stark white at 81, Gianni Russo finds himself trapped in a different kind of storm, one of isolation and fierce public backlash. A controversial memoir filled with outrageous claims about his reckless private life and alleged ties to Marilyn Monroe ignited outrage, branding him a braggart and a bigot. He lives on the razor's edge between living legend and ostracized fantasist. Though he possesses a multi-million-dollar fortune, Russo remains a prisoner of his past, retelling old stories on podcasts day after day, grasping at the fading remnants of fame. Even the neon glamour of Las Vegas cannot fill the void in a soul that has tasted both the glory and the disgrace of the gangster life. Gianni Russo endures as one of the last surviving fragments of the old mafia era. He is the defiant, romantic gangster, the final witness left to tell future generations about a time when the line between good and evil was as thin and fragile as a single thread. Robert Duvall as Tom Hagen. Robert Duvall, in the role of Tom Hagen, stood as the voice of reason in a world spiraling into violence. The character's calm authority, sharp intelligence, and unwavering loyalty formed a perfect counterweight, one that helped the Corleone family endure relentless storms while elevating Duvall into the ranks of the most respected stars of the 1970s in The Godfather. Duvall's real life has carried the same rises and falls as his roles. Through 4 marriages, he tasted both the fullness of love and the ache of separation, yet bore a private sorrow of having no children to carry on his name. He once admitted with quiet bitterness that his roles were his spiritual children. His greatest fear has never been death, but becoming useless, no longer able to give, no longer able to live beneath the stage lights that nourished his soul for decades. Now 95, Robert Duvall is the oldest surviving member of The Godfather still walking this world. Yet his present image stirs heartbreak, a legend bound to a wheelchair. He continues to make appearances when he can, but his body no longer obeys his will. His haunting words, "If I can't act anymore, I will die of sadness," read like a painful confession from a man terrified of being forgotten. He stands alone, watching one co-star after another, one colleague after another, slip away, leaving him adrift in the unforgiving current of a new era. Today, Robert Duvall is like the last flickering lighthouse. He is a living legacy, the final bridge to that golden age. Even in frailty, his presence remains a solemn, heroic reminder of a Godfather era that will never truly die. Simonetta Stefanelli as Apollonia Vitelli Corleone. Apollonia, in her pure white wedding dress, stands as the ultimate symbol of innocence and true, untainted love. The fragile, almost sacred beauty of Simonetta Stefanelli could soften even the hardest hearts. Her character's too soon death in the car explosion left an endless ache, a deep, jagged wound in Michael Corleone's heart, and in the audience's as well. Hollywood, the world's film capital, opened its arms to this Italian flower, but along with the welcome came indecent demands for nudity and explicit scenes. Simonetta firmly refused the path of becoming a cheap sex symbol, choosing to turn her back on fame to protect her dignity. Disillusioned by the industry's traps, she retreated to her homeland, distancing herself completely from the glamorous yet hollow flashbulbs. She accepted burying a promising acting career in exchange for peace, so her sensitive spirit would not be crushed by the merciless machine of status and ambition. Her greatest pain did not come from illness, but from the cruelty of public rumor. In 2006, the internet spread a vicious lie that she had died, and the world mourned a beauty taken too soon. She was forced to live with the feeling of being erased while still breathing, and had to speak out bitterly, "I'm alive. I just don't want to belong to Hollywood anymore." That period of depression and seclusion became a long, heavy minor note in her life, as a talented woman watched her name carved onto a virtual tombstone and saw strangers invent false stories about her. It was far too high a price for choosing a quiet life, an emotional wound so deep it is difficult to heal. Completely shedding the mantle of stardom, Simonetta Stefanelli has now found joy in designing handbags in Rome. The former muse chose to grow older in stillness, proof that real happiness sometimes lies in daring to walk away from everything just to remain truly yourself. Morgana King as Carmela Mama Corleone. Morgana King's deep, mournful jazz voice in Luna Mezzo Mare became a melody of remembrance. She was the film's gentle note, the rare place of calm that softened the brutality of a criminal empire, etching the image of a devoted Sicilian mother into the audience's heart in The Godfather. Beyond the set, fate struck her with a succession of devastating blows that shattered her spirit. The pain of losing her husband in a mysterious 1963 car accident, long rumored to have mafia ties, had barely eased when an even greater horror followed. She witnessed the death of her only daughter, taken by a vicious fire just before the film went into production. A mother's heart seemed to turn to stone, submerged in a sea of bitter tears. She withdrew into the shadows, turning to meditation to soothe wounds that bled anew each day. The final stretch of her earthly path was darkened by the cruel diagnosis of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. With the stage lights gone, she sold off possessions and cherished keepsakes to cover medical bills, retreating into solitary seclusion in Palm Springs. On March 22, 2018, she passed quietly, carrying with her an immeasurable longing for her husband and child. Her last words, "Now I just want to rest," land like a sorrowful sigh from a life that had endured too much upheaval. She left without fanfare, releasing her soul from a body worn down by illness. A simple funeral, without flowers and scarcely any mourners, marked the final period on the life of a once celebrated jazz legend. She returned to the earth, leaving behind a vast stillness and a tender, irreplaceable performance that endures. Richard S. Castellano as Peter Clemenza. Richard S. Castellano brought Clemenza vividly to life, a hefty, good-natured mobster who could kill without hesitation. The legendary line he himself helped craft, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli," became immortal, perfectly blending casual brutality with everyday warmth, making the character strangely endearing to audiences in The Godfather. Yet neither Oscar glory nor the fame of The Godfather could save him from the demons within. His career went into free fall after he refused to appear in Part 2, citing strict demands over the script and his weight. Obesity became a looming sentence, bringing dangerous complications such as high blood pressure. Hollywood gradually forgot him, forcing Castellano to scrape for minor television roles, desperately chasing lost glory while trapped in a body growing heavier, weaker, and more uncooperative by the day. Fate wrote a tragic ending on December 10, 1988. A massive heart attack struck him down in his New Jersey home. He was only 55, an age when a gifted actor should still have had years left to give. His passionate manuscript, History of the Method, remained unfinished, much like his own life. No miracle came, only the cold certainty of birth, illness, aging, and death, claiming a charming talent and leaving shock in the hearts of those who loved Clemenza's booming laugh. Richard S. Castellano departed this world far too soon, carrying with him the regret of an unfulfilled career. Yet whenever audiences hear the word cannoli, they remember him, the man who taught Michael Corleone how to pull the trigger and taught us all how to find a fleeting moment of joy, even in the darkest of worlds.